Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome once again to the Behind the Steel Curtain family of podcast. This particular one is the Steelers Q&A, where we ask a burning question and you guys answer it and then ask your own questions when we get to that certain point. So with that being said, my name is Bryan Anthony Davis. You can call me bad. You could call me anything except for late for supper. That was my grandmother's old joke. And you could call my good friend Tony Defeo, who's with me tonight from behind the steel curtain. Tony, what is going on?
I am having a pretty decent Monday, just nice and peaceful. How about you?
I'm having a good day myself. It's a beautiful day here in Maryland. This would have been a perfect day to watch baseball. This would be a perfect day for lots of things. But you know what? Still doing the career thing at home, and hopefully in that end of my life that I'll be back out and about on the street maybe next week. So that'll be a good thing. Doing my job. Maybe this might be my last week at home. But with that being said, I just love the fact that we have an opportunity to hang out with our good friends in the live chat, watching them stream in. Nathaniel Zarate, the great Dennis Sheridan, the equally great Ryan Kellerman, equally great Cree, Ezra, Dill Whittet, and Reginald Rivers. And those are the last ones I'm going to say because those are the ones up on the board. But we've got a programming note, and it's a very special programming note. As much fun as we're going to have today at this hour, I need you later on tonight to tune in to BTSC, because we're going to have a very special guest on the show. It's not going to be me. It's going to be Dave Schofield and Michael Beck with a current Pittsburgh Steeler. So that is going to be, yeah. And I'm not going to tell you who it is.
I don't have that in my notes. This is like reality TV.
So Dave didn't tell you when he was talking to you earlier.
Well, no, I mean, I was acting.
So
he told me.
So let's flood the live chat. Let's watch that live. It's going to be really exciting. I believe 9:30, if I'm not mistaken. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. So definitely check it out. Dennis Sheridan says who he hopes it is. I will actually tell you it's not Ryan Switzer, and that's the last one I'm going to tell you. Gosh, if it was Ryan Switzer, I'd be on the show because I'm becoming one of his greatest fans. And I would definitely be on that show, but it is not Switzer. But
if it was Ryan Switzer,
what's that?
If it was Ryan Switzer, if I were him, I would troll everybody.
He would. But I can't give you any hints to who it is, but he will make he's assuredly, in my mind, going to make the 53-man roster. And I'm not going to tell you anything about him. I'm not going to tell you whether he's a draft pick, whether he was a free agent pickup, whether he came to the team off of waivers, nothing. Whether he's been here a long time. I can't do that because we just don't want to ruin the surprise. I will tell you this. Cree's asking offense, defense, or coach. It's a player. It is a player that will be suiting up hopefully come September, if that's what happens. So it's going to be absolutely fantastic. But we got to get to the show at hand. And when we're talking about the show at hand here, I'm sorry, I get distracted. My adult ADHD is really coming in. Ryan Kellerman wants to know if it's Frank Webb. If it was Frank Webb, which it's not, that's not his name. His name is Ralph Webb. If it was Frank Webb, I guarantee you that that Jeff Hartman would have to be on that show. We would have to bring him back just for the fact that if Ralph Webb was on the show, who he has named Frank. But Dave Schofield says hints will be coming on our Twitter, BT Steel Curtain. So check that out. And maybe we might have a hint later on in the show, or maybe during the show. You will see a hint on the show or hear a hint something might happen, but and it's not going to be Dick Shiner. Dick Shiner passed away, Nathaniel. So did Buzz Nutter. They're both departed. But we're really excited, and this is what we've been trying to say on all of our shows. We're really excited about. We're going to try to have guests here and there as we get them. We're really working hard to get guys on the show, whether they be retired players, whether they be current players. If we can go ahead and do that, that would be fantastic. That just gives you more and more of the fan experience and the BTSC experience, and we're going to continue to do that. But we're going to talk about defense right now, Tony. And if you do have a question for the show, let's wait about 25, 30 minutes when we ask for questions, because it'll be better then, so my ADHD doesn't go crazy. But we're going to talk about the major question in hand. And this is a good one. A lot of the questions from time to time, they're like, is this a bad time for the Steelers? Are the Steelers going to, is Ben Roethlisberger going to be back? Blah, blah, blah. Is he going to truly be able to play? Who's the backup quarterback going to be? But this time around, we have a question about the greatness of the 2020 Steelers and the 2020 Steeler defense for the past couple years. 19, 18, 17. We have seen an increase in one category. And Tony, what category has that been? Sacks. The Steelers are definitely sack masters. They set an NFL record the last 3 years with the most 3-year total of sacks, and they did that last year. They have been consistently 54, 56, right around there the last few years, and they have been getting to the quarterback, and the Pittsburgh Steelers get to the quarterback. Now, here's something that I want to bring up. When you look at the all-time Steeler sack lead and the sack leaders, we know who number one is. Tony, I'll let you say it. You know who number one is with a bullet.
Debo.
James Harrison has 80.5 sacks for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I get what you're going to say. Where's LC Greenwood? They put LC Greenwood on that list at one time, but when he retired, that's when they started putting the sacks in. 1982 was when they started counting sacks as an official stat. So if you really look at the leaders, at one point he was all time until Jason Gilden passed him. But when you're looking at 1982 and beyond, that's kind of what they look at. So any stat that we have is not including Joe Green. It's not including Ernie Stotner, and it's not including LC Greenwood and the such. But if you look at the top 5 right now, Tony, you have James Harrison, number 1. I just mentioned number 2 in Jason Gilden, and Jason Gilden has 77. Then there is a divide. Number 3 is way down there at 60. Do you have any guess who that would be, Tony?
Keith Willis.
That's number 4 at 59.
Would it
this
be,
one should be easy peasy for you.
Greg Lloyd.
It should be easy peasy for you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Joey Porter is at number 3 with 60. Keith Willis with 59 at number 4. Number 5 is going to surprise you because you said Greg Lloyd. He's actually number 7 at 53.5. Number 5 is Lamar Woodley with 57 for the Steelers. Number 6. Do you happen to know who number 6 would be?
I'm going to take an educated guess and say Mike Merriweather.
I'm going to actually, Mike Merriweather is at number 15 with 31. Number 6 is the reason we're talking today. And the reason we're talking today is number 6 is a current player.
Oh, TJ Watt. I would have to say TJ Watt for sure.
No, not for sure. No, he's not. Cameron Hayward. Cam Hayward had 54 sacks. Yeah.
Wow,
I mean, his last few seasons have been lights out. And Cam Hayward, here's the great thing about Cam Hayward. If you look at his first couple years, he was people thought he was a bust the first 2 years at least. He really didn't start coming into his own until around the third year. I didn't think he was a bust, but took him some time to start showing up there. But he's been a monster, and you could have made a point for him to be Defensive Player of the Year last year. And if you look at, and I got to tell you, really proud of this. One of our major listeners and major viewers in the live chat wrote an article and it was published. It was Thaddeus Kennedy talking about who he made his debut this week and who could be Defensive Player of the Year on the Steeler team. And he mentioned that his numbers were almost equivalent to that of Aaron Donald, except for forced fumbles. But he had the same amount of sacks, pretty much the same amount of tackles. So that's something that definitely hurt him in that category. So the reason I bring this up, if we talk about the rest of the top 10, we'll just go easy here. Greg Lloyd, number 7, Aaron Smith, number 8, Kevin Green, number 9. And it's amazing he only had 3 years as a Steeler. And number 10 is Lawrence Timmons at 35.5. This is why we're having the conversation now. Do you realize that there's 3 more players that have a reasonable chance to make the top 10 all time for the Pittsburgh Steelers after the 2020 season? There's 3 of them. There's one more that would need 17, and he's not the kind of player that would get that many in a season. But the other 3 that have a reasonable chance to actually be in the top 10 after 2020 would be, who do you think, Tony? Because we didn't go over this beforehand. So I'm putting you on the I'm putting you on the snide here. So
I'm gonna have to go with my main man. Vince Williams is one of them, right?
Vince Williams is the one guy that will not get there this year. He's 17 away.
I was at the 17.
Yeah, he's not 17th. He's 17 away from the top 10. He has 17 and a half sacks, if I'm not mistaken, from the work that I did beforehand. Yes, 17 and a half. He is at number 30. To get into the top 10, he would need 18 sacks.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to go with TJ Watt. Is that one of them, I'm assuming? Because that's why
TJ Watt is currently number 11. He would need one sack to be tied for number 10.
Okay.
Actually, he'd be tied for number 9 with one sack, because there's a tie at number 9 right now between Kevin Green and Lawrence Timmons.
Okay. Well, just based on pure math, Bud had 20 coming into last year. He had 11 and a half, so it would be Bud would be the next one.
So Bud has 31 and a half. You are absolutely correct on that, which means he would need 4 to be in a tie for the top 10. But he might need he would need 4, because we know that TJ is going to get there as well, unless something really rough happens. Somebody mentioned Jarvis Jones, and I gotta tell you, I gotta laugh because, guys, I'm wearing Jarvis Jones today.
All right.
I was getting ready to put this one away forever, and I saw it. I'm like, yeah, let's wear Jarvis. I like the number 95 there. So let's go ahead and bring him up. But so yeah, you've got 1. You've got 2 with Bud Dupree, who is currently 13th. And there's one more, and he's currently 21st with 23.5 sacks. So that means he would need 12 sacks to tie Timmons and Green at that spot.
Based on everything we've talked about so far, it would have to be Tuitt, because if it's not Vinnie Mac or Vince Williams, it has to be Tuitt.
And it is definitely Stephon Tuitt, which I could have wore that jersey because I have his jersey as well. But Stephon Tuitt, I mean, and 12 sacks is not really a stretch for him if he's healthy. Last year, he wasn't healthy. If he is healthy, then there you go. He would, I mean, it should be no problem. It could, I'm not saying it's a stretch, but it's definitely possible. Robert Sasovitz says this: I wish we could get totals for the players before 1982. I think they're out there somewhere. If you look on, that would take some gathering, and that's something that we can definitely do. But really what they look at is 1982. If you had to, but I don't want to, I want to pay credence to Robert Sasovitz there for what he was saying. So if you're looking at those other guys that would probably be in the top 10, if they counted sacks before 1982, you would probably have about, what do you say, 4 more guys?
Well, yeah, definitely Mean Joe, LC. You have to
Dwight
put them
White
in there. Dwight White. Yeah.
And maybe Ernie Stotner, but
right.
But I'm not absolutely sure. That's
yeah. And the great linebackers of the 70s, they were more in the pass coverage because they didn't need the blitz because of the front four. So I don't think it'd be them.
Yeah. So I'm really not sure, and that's something we could go look at a Jack Ham. We could look at a Lambert as well. We can look at some of those guys. You can even look at Banaszak. I don't know where Banaszak would be as well. There's guys you could look at, and that's something that if I could ever get some time, I would go ahead and do.
I know the great Deacon. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I know the great Deacon Jones, the legendary Deacon Jones. He was on some NFL film show one time back in the 80s, and he said just on his own time he counted all the sacks he had on film, and he had he said according to him he had 180 because obviously he played well before the sacks became an official stat. So he said he had 175, 180. So, and he was one of the most prolific pass rushers of all time. He just happened to play before it was an official stat. So I'm thinking Mean Joe and LC would be up there close to probably 70, 80, 85.
So if you look at it, so I just looked up Jack Ham, his career statistics, and this is according to Wikipedia, but his career statistics include 25 sacks, and he retired in 82. So, if you're looking at that, or maybe it was 83 when he retired, and he didn't do that all in one season. So if you're looking at that, he would not be in the top 10. But and we know that LC would have been. So that's something that we can, that we can go ahead and look at some of these guys. And I'll probably do that in the future when I'm screwing around, and we can bring those up. That'd be great. If anybody wants to look up guys like, we know LC, but if you want to look at what Joe Green's total would be, what a Banaszak total would be, what Jack Lambert would be, throwing Ernie Stotner as well. So if anybody in the live chat wants to do some research for us right now, feel free. I just did it while I was still talking. So that's something that we can definitely do. But here's the thing. This is what begs the entire question, though. Could this be a renaissance defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers as far as sacks? Could this be the sack era for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Oh yeah, they're definitely at the height of their powers right now, and maybe even not even there. They may not even have reached that point yet. If you look at those defenses from the 70s, there was no doubt that they were going to put heavy pressure on the quarterback every year, and same with the 90s Pittsburgh defenses and the defenses of the 2000s, Dick LeBeau's defenses. So yeah, at the rate they're going with that front seven that they have with TJ Budd, Tua, Cam Hayward, you mentioned Vince Williams, yeah, and now Devin Bush, those guys. There's not going to be an issue with putting pressure on the quarterback. It's not going to suddenly fall off the table. They're all still young, and I think some of them are getting better. So I think this can go on for another 2 or 3 years.
Okay, so we don't know the answer to this question. A lot of people, that are Steeler fans, will go ahead and say this. they will say that they really think that TJ Watt will be a lifetime Steeler and retire as a Steeler. We don't know that. We don't know how contract negotiations will work out. It just seems like it right now. We don't know. But I did this last year. If he stays healthy, and this is just based on last year's numbers, take 2019 out of the equation, but going into the 2019 season, he had 20 total sacks in 2 years. If he would average 10 sacks a year for the next 6 years, and I'm talking including 2019, we're going in the time machine here, but he would have had to average 10 sacks a year for the next 6 years to have 80 and be a half behind Debo. So now he is 34 and a half. So he needs a total of 46 sacks. And that's it. He needs 46 sacks in his career to be the all-time sacker in Pittsburgh Steelers history. That is really where he's trending right now. If something happens that Bud Dupree comes back and plays and signs a contract and continues his career and ends his career with the Steelers, he could be number 1 or number 2. He could be the all-time sacker in Pittsburgh Steelers history. My money's on TJ just because of the contract situation and the fact that, and he's younger, but you never know because we don't know what health is going to come into play. But could you see, I mean, like I said, it'd be unheard of to say that a guy with an 8-year career here could be the all-time sack leader. That is a testament to this being the era of the sack, Tony.
Yeah, and I think it shows you. Somebody mentioned in the live chat the improvements in the secondary over the last few years, how they slowly rebuilt that secondary. You're not gonna have to sell out with the blitz like they were. I think 2 years ago they blitzed 39% of the time. Last year it was all the way down to 36.7. So you're not gonna have, and still they led the league with pressures at 180. So when you have pressure coming from everywhere, I mean, how can you double team TJ Watt, right? And if Bud Dupree comes back, or if Alex Highsmith evolves into a solid number 2 or a strong side linebacker, then TJ's gonna be able to keep wreaking havoc year after year. I mean, they didn't talk about Lawrence Taylor slowing down at any point until his golden year. So why would TJ Watt? I think he's only getting better. He's getting better each and every year, and I think the arrow's still pointing up for him. So as long as they have a suitable guy on the other side, and plus as long as we're bringing pressure from every direction like they have been with that front seven, then yeah, I think he's going to be the all-time guy, and sooner rather than later.
Now, here's something about the Steeler defense for 2020. Now, can they continue being on the sack trend? The first thing that anybody's going to say is, wait a second, you just lost 6.5 sacks with Javon Hargrave going. Have you really improved on Hargrave? And here's what I say to that. Yeah, you're going to lose 6.5 sacks, but you pretty much have everybody else that got you those sacks, with the exception of Chickalo that might have gotten you 1 last year. But you've got Hilton back, who gets you sacks from the secondary. You also have Stephon Tuitt, who was on a roll. He was the dominant defensive lineman before he got hurt early in the season. You have him back. You've also are going to have more of a presence from Tyson Alualu this year, who Tyson Alualu is one of those unsung heroes for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He really is. He was an unsung hero on that defense last year. He's a blue-collar guy that does good things when he's in there. And really, things could have been a lot worse when Tuitt went down. Now it wasn't as bad because Alualu was there. Still was not Stephon Tuitt, but Alualu was pretty good. And then you also throw in the fact that you've added Chris Wormley in a trade. Now, Chris Wormley is more of a run defender, and he's a dynamic run defender. He really is. He's very good against the run. So he's going to have a lot of presence, but he might be good for 3 or 4 sacks in there too. And you get 3 or 4 sacks from him. You get a few more than the, I believe, 4.5 that you got from, Alualu, and then you're making up for it. Now, somebody mentioned that I was corrected there. Someone mentioned that Barron might have had a couple in there too, and he did. But you'll find a way to make up for that with whoever is in that spot. So there's some really good things going on here as well with this team. You have a bright future as far as sackers, and we talk about this team all along. Health. If this is a healthy team, if Ben Roethlisberger stays healthy and the defense stays healthy, this could be a Super Bowl team. But that's ifs. That's big ifs. But if it happens, they've got the players to do it. They need the luck. Right. 2019 was the biggest no luck year I've ever seen from the Steelers. Can you think of a bigger no luck year, Tony, than 2019? Because you've got a 40-year history as being a fan like I do.
Well, I mean, it's just from the standpoint of losing their best player early on and having everything that happened with Antonio Brown, him getting traded because he just had a falling out with the organization. Yeah, it's hard to think of a worse one. And then the guys you were counting on, like Juju, he had problems with injuries, and of course James Conner did. So it's just your offense was never at 100% strength. And then you're talking about a new offensive line coach with John Surratt, replacing a legend like Mike Munchak. So yeah, everything that they just never really had a fair shake last year with the offense. I mean, you would have liked to have seen one of the young quarterbacks come in and really, catch lightning in a bottle with one of those two guys. But, it didn't happen. They're like a lot of young quarterbacks, they struggled. So, no, I can't think of one, especially when you consider as high, high expectations that everybody had of them coming into the year. No, I can't think of maybe 2014 when Le'Veon Bell went down at the end of the year. He was their meal ticket, and they lost him right before the playoffs. But other than that, I really can't think of one in recent times.
The other reason that we can go back to the defense being as solid as it was, and here's a guy that took a lot of guff from me over the last years, and I kind of held back on that last year because I liked what he did. You brought in Terrell Austin to help out Keith Butler, but where Keith Butler really showed why he's been here for such a long time, he had more attention to the outside linebackers last year, with Joey Porter being relieved from his duties. Then you had Butler, still the defensive coordinator, but he was working with those outside linebackers, and he made a big difference. He definitely made a huge difference in the life of Bud Dupree. If anybody, when Bud Dupree gets on his knees, saying a prayer for Keith Butler, because Keith Butler helped his career, really helped jumpstart his career. I mean, restart his career. He had a sack renaissance. So that's kind of what I'm looking at here. Everything is lined up for them to continue to be the sack masters of the league and be the sack masters in Pittsburgh Steelers history, Tony.
I agree 100%. I think this defense is in a really good way right now. I think they have a lot of tremendous talent in the front seven, and they have you could say they got lucky with the secondary because Joe Hayden was cut, but they regressed in getting him, and you could say they were lucky with Mickey Fitzpatrick because he was disgruntled. and wanted out of Miami, but they were aggressive and went and got him, and they were aggressive with Devin Bush to go up and get him. So, they've really done a great job with rebuilding this defense, and I think it's going to be a strong unit for at least the next 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's already been, last year was just the beginning, right? So I don't see it just falling off the table anytime soon. I think it's going to be it's going to be on top for a while.
Now, I asked for questions for the show, and we're going to go into that right now. If you had asked a question earlier in the show, please re-ask that if you want that. And remember, you do have the super chat. We have the super chat feature that you can go ahead and go to the top of the queue. If you want to go to the top of the queue and get in here and pay some of your hard-earned cash that will help us with the cost of the show and maybe for some giveaways, please do so. I'm hoping to spend some of that money to get Tony a mic just like mine. And I know he's resisting it, but we're going to get him there. So Nathaniel Zarate, I finally have it right. How many catches will Banner have this year, Tony?
1, maybe.
I'm going to say 0. But I would love to see him get 1. That would be absolutely fantastic. Dave Schofield, he always says this, and I appreciate that he says this, that when you see Zach Banner come in, then you know that they are going to go ahead and run the ball. So I would love for them to be a little more imaginative as far as that goes when he comes in. So it's just not telegraphing your every move. Snowman, when will the Steelers start signing the draft picks and offer sheet players? That's interesting, Tony, because I really they would probably start doing that sometime in late June, early July, but everything's thrown off this year. Do you think that might be thrown off because of the pandemic as well? Because they're putting money aside for it. The money's there. The 5.5 under the cap or so that they have is for practice squad guys, for new guys, for the entire roster. That's why they haven't spent too much in the last month or so where they could. But do you think that's going to come up pretty soon?
It should. I read something today where they might start training camp in mid-July, just to get the players assimilated to their training camp. So it's just a mere formality, I think, because these are all slotted, positions, like, right? I mean, if the 10th pick gets slotted a certain way, the 50th pick. So it's just a formality. It's just a matter of when they decide to move forward with it and do it.
I agree. That's something that we just have to stay tuned. And I think other fans are doing the same thing with that as well. Here's a great question. It's X Eddie B asks, if Bud gets under 5 sacks, do we keep him cheap? Yeah. I think you do. But that only if he is not healthy.
Right.
I mean, only if he's healthy and gets under 5 sacks, you could keep him cheap. I still think this team would. I don't expect him to be under 5 sacks. I expect him to have another really good year. However, my thought on him is if he's unhealthy and he's under 5 sacks, teams might pony up the money for him if they believe he's healthy at the time. I could be wrong on that, but that might be the way that you keep Bud. But do you really? Then you're back to thinking, all right, is he really worth it to keep? And I think they would think he's worth it, but then you're going to have that asterisk there. Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't see any way he gets under 5 sacks if he, like you said, if he is healthy. I mean, he picked up his game so much last year. He's such a great athlete, and as long as he's healthy with TJ Watt on the other side, and again with all the pressure they're able to generate on that defensive line and with Vince Williams and everything, I don't see any way possible he could get less than 5 sacks if he is healthy. So
yeah,
Yeah, bottom line is I think they're going to have to open up their pocketbook for him, and I don't know if that's all too realistic with what they're going to have to pay TJ Watt. But I've been wrong before. I hope I'm wrong again.
You know what? I kind of expect them to pay him. If they can. But if he gets under, I just don't expect him to get under 5 sacks. And when I said I expect him to pay him, I've already gone ahead to my next question. So please excuse me for that. It's my ADHD again. But if Bud does get under 5 sacks, I think you still keep the guy. But you might be able to get him a little cheaper. I don't know how much, but you possibly could. But I just don't expect that to happen. Great question, though. Before I get to the next question, you know what? I read Snowman's question. I did not thank him for the $5. So thank you, Snowman. I do really appreciate you throwing that in the super chat. Now, Reed Overend asked the question that I started to answer. Does Cam Hayward end up getting an extension beyond this year? I think they pay this man. I think he's a lifelong Steeler. They're going to find a way to pay Cam Hayward. I don't know I really don't know to the expense of who else, but I think Cam's a priority on this team. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, at this stage of his career, I think he's already probably had his biggest contract. So you're not going to have to. It's not going to be a long-term deal, 4 or 5 years. I mean, so at this point, he's probably looking at probably 2-year deals from now until the time he retires. So, as long as it's a reasonable annual salary and guaranteed money and everything like that, I think they'll be able to keep him around because they're going to have to find somebody else if they don't, because all you have left is Stephon Tuitt as far as the superstars along that line, unless somebody else, one of the youngsters, develops. Even Tyson Alualu, he's a veteran now. He's been in the league. He came in 1 year before Cam. So if they don't keep Cam, they're going to have to infuse that line with some decent talent over the next couple of years.
Do you realize that, and I know we've talked about this before, but you brought up Alualu, who was the number 10 pick in the 2010 draft, number 10 overall pick from Jacksonville. Joe Hayden, I believe, was the number 7 overall pick with the Cleveland Browns. And then Marquise Pouncey was the number 18 overall pick going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you look at that, and the Steelers, 11 years later, have 3 of the top 18 picks in a very good draft, actually. Right. Cree, great fan of the show, great friend of the show. Really appreciate Cree, as we appreciate all of you that are in our live chat. Bad and Tony, what will be more likely to happen? More interceptions or more sacks than last year? And Tony, I kind of think more sacks. I'd love to see more interceptions, but I really think that they're going to still have more sacks.
Yeah, I mean, I can see them maybe, because it's hard to top what they've been doing with the sacks. I mean, if they can just average what they've been averaging, 162 over the last 3 years, if they can just keep averaging that'd be great. As far as interceptions, I mean, nobody wants to throw Minka's direction. I mean, we saw that the last 5 or 6 games last year, they just stopped going in his direction. Joe Hayden is a great cover corner, and Steven Nelson, I mean, he was lights out last year. He barely even noticed him. So I don't even know if they're going to have the opportunities to get more interceptions. So I think I want to say more INTs, but the way they've been going with the sacks, I have to. Even though I'm torn, I have to go with sacks.
I agree. Let's go more rapid fire here. John Trent, where do you see our offense and defense ranking in the 2020 season, Tony Defeo?
Well, defense definitely top 3. I'd be surprised if it fell out of the top 5 with the talent they have. As far as offense, I think it's a reversal of a few years ago with the offense and defense. I think if the offense can finish anywhere around the top 10, I think you're in good shape.
I'll even give them a little bit more leeway, and I'll say if the offense finishes in the top 50%, if the offense could finish around 16 and up, and I see them more of a top 12 defense, top 12 offense. So I'll go there. Defense top 5 again. Depressed Steeler fan, how do you feel on the running back situation, Bryan? I feel better about it right now. I really love what I'm seeing from James Conner. If you listen to Tony's show the other day, talking about Conner and Juju and their great dedication in the offseason. Look, I know they have contracts coming up, but these guys are more prideful than that. These guys, James Conner says he is a Pittsburgh guy. I know he's from Erie, but he went to college here. He is Pittsburgh through and through. He wants to remain here. And, health is the only thing really keeping James Conner from going from really being the running back that we crave. So I really like the situation because I like Snell backing them up. I like the possibility of a change in pace with Anthony McFarland. You have a guy like Jalen Samuels that might not make the team, but is good enough too. And the same with Kareth White as well. So I think it's a good stable. We'll just see what happens. But with Ben coming back, makes that running back stable better. And the receivers make that running back stable better as well. And Depressed Steeler fan, he definitely agrees that going to have a top 5 defense again here. Ezra asks, now that we're inching closer to kickoff, who's your biggest worry, not including health? His is Terrell Edmonds. Who's your biggest worry, Tony?
I'd say for me, not including health, geez, I'd have to say even if he's healthy, will Ben be the Ben of old? I think that's gonna determine a lot. Even if he's 100% healthy, he might have lost his fastball, right? We just don't know. So I think everything hinges on Ben, and I have no doubt he's going to come back healthy, but will he come back as close to his old self as possible?
Okay, that leads into Donald Nolan's question. Do you look at Roethlisberger's last full season when he threw 5,000 yards, or do you look at his 6 quarters he played last year as an indicator of how he will play this year? Look, I don't know how long Ben Roethlisberger elbow has been hurting him and how long it's been wrong, but I know those 6 quarters that he played last year were an indicator of how hurt he was more than anything. So I think you could actually throw that out. If you listen to the Homer and the Hater show with myself and Lance Williams yesterday, we were looking at the fact that if you can get back to Ben Roethlisberger of 16, around 15, 16, 17, around there, the numbers that he had there, with a lot more touchdown passes than interceptions, then you're going to have a much better Ben Roethlisberger. If that, he says that arm feels better, that elbow is the most crisp he's been throwing, the most pain-free he's been throwing in a long time. And I think that includes 2018 when he had a lot of interceptions. I really think that he's going to be better. And Tony and I, we talk about this all the time. How many passes that last year in 2018 was he forcing into Antonio Brown? And most of his interceptions were towards Antonio Brown. A lot of that was trying to keep peace, trying to get him from yapping in his ear, get him off his back. And which, I know you have to go the other way, but there was pressure there, even for a veteran leader. He was trying to get, I'm guessing, I'm surmising, but I'm really thinking, Tony, that if he makes Antonio Brown happy, then there's less problem in the locker room.
Oh, absolutely. Look at how much Antonio complained in 2015 when Ben was out and Landry Jones and Michael Vick weren't getting him the ball. And then he had a good game against the Chiefs and a loss when Landry Jones started. You didn't hear all that much from Antonio. And then look at the game in 2017 in Baltimore, the Gatorade toss that day. They won by 17 or whatever the final score was. I think it was 27-10, something like that. Yet he was on Instagram saying, what his kids saying, tell them to throw daddy the ball. So I think, Ben had a lot of pressure when it came to trying to make Antonio Brown happy. I mean, he led the league not just in receptions year after year, but far and away in targets. So, Ben knew he had to try to appease Antonio Brown. I think the offensive coordinator knew he had to try to appease Antonio Brown. So that's not going to be an issue this year because nobody on that none of the skill position players have that kind of cachet. So he's going to throw to who he wants to throw. He's the man. Nobody else is really even close to him as far as the status. So yeah, I think that was a big deal. More than we realize.
Okay, let's ask John Trent's question here. Does James Conner have a Pro Bowl season this year? Let's go rapid fire. I say yes.
The way he's training, yes.
I think he's going to be healthy. Dill Whittet. Do you think they play Juju in the slot if Claypool can get up to speed or even use Washington with Deontay on the outside? I think they need to be creative like that occasionally. Tony, last year they really didn't have much as far as a wide receiver coach because they had, with the death of Darryl Drake in training camp, they brought Ray Sherman in. And that was, but he was pretty much a caretaker. And as far as that goes, you really just didn't have, he was just watching, basically, as far as I'm concerned. Now, at this point, you have Matt Canada coming in, helping with the quarterbacks. He's going to help as far as the offensive game plan goes. I think they're a lot more creative.
Yeah, well, and they're versatile, too. I mean, both Deontay Johnson and Juju, they can play in a slot, and they can play X, is that what it's called, the number one slot, whereas James Washington's more of a Y, I guess, but they're all versatile, and that's the great thing about this. I think Claypool may be the least versatile as far as just based on his size, but you never know either. Who knows? But I think you don't have to have one guy in any one slot, no pun intended. I think you can mix these guys up. Mix and match.
Ezra, another great one. Ezra Nehemiah. And I never noticed that he had Hall of Fame on his on the back of his Troy Polamalu jersey. I've always seen that 43 and I've never looked at it because my eyes aren't good. And now I'm seeing it plain as day. Ezra, who stays healthier, Ben or Connor? They both need to. But
yeah,
I think Ben stays healthy. The line's going to protect him. Connor, it's just how he gets hit. So I expect Ben probably might have a better opportunity to stay healthy because Connor's getting hit on every time he carries the ball. Ben is not getting hit every time he goes back to pass.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, how many times does a number one running back touch the ball in the Steelers offense? I mean, in years past, but Le'Veon Bell was up to 400. So, yeah, I think you have a better shot with Ben staying healthy.
All right, here's a question we kind of talked about before, but we did not. Now I lost it, but we did not really. Touch on this part of it. So Robert Sazovitz asked, do you think TJ can set the single season sack record? Now, is that a Steelers sack record? Because he came close last year because the Steelers sack record, single season, is 2008. It's Debo with 16, and he had 14 and a half last year. I think he can do that. As far as the NFL sack record, which I believe single season record, is it 23 now, Tony?
I think it's 23, yes. 23 or 22 and a half.
And who even has that now? Is it because I know
Strahan.
I know Strahan had it back in got it back in 2001. So let's go ahead and go to my good friend Google single season sack record NFL. And for some reason, I think somebody got ahead of him. And no, it's still the 22 and a half from Michael Strahan and the 2001 season. And I do remember Brett Favre just going down and helping him along with that people were like, what's up with that? I mean, it's possible for TJ to get that. I don't think TJ needs to because the sacks are coming from elsewhere on that team. If he continues to keep on being around 15 or break the single season record with 16, he's just as efficient. That Giants team that Strahan did it with, I don't even know if they were a playoff team that year. So I'm really looking more at the fact that they all are, if the team's in the 50s again, and if they're higher than 60, then that's just a dominant defensive year with the sacks. Here's a thing. Donald says, this isn't a question. He just says, I think Ben will have his best year statistically. And we were talking about that on the show yesterday with Lance and myself. I really think so. If he's healthy, he's going to have a great year statistically. He doesn't have to, though. Even if his yards are down, and the running game's helping him out, if he has a 3,800 yard passing year and not a 4,800 yard passing year, he's still having a pretty good year. His sweet spot really is anywhere between 3,800 and 4,100. And those were Super Bowl years for him when he's had those kind of numbers. So I think that's something you're looking at. Ezra asks this: who do we hope has the bigger year, Juju, Connor, Ebron, or Minka?
Wow.
Tony, I'll give you that one first.
I think as far as what the running back means to the Steelers offense dating back to the days of Le'Veon Bell, I think if Connor has a big year, I think it's gonna bode well for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, Minka, he it could be him, but I think it's more important that it's James Conner, because I think if he has a big year, then I think everybody else is going to fall in line. Juju, Ebron, and of course, the defense is separate. But if Minka has if he's the Minka of last year, I think we'll be okay with that.
Even if he's not the Minka stat wise as he was last year, it doesn't matter, and I'll tell you why. So I'm going to hit on all these guys real quick, but Minka, for me, statistically, the last 8 games of the season, he wasn't getting the interceptions. Why? Because they only threw his way 2 times in those last 8 games. That's how dangerous he was. So if you're a defensive back and you don't have the interceptions, but you don't have the targets against you, you're doing something right. And that's exactly what Minka's doing. So statistically, it's the eye test with a guy like Minka Fitzpatrick. He's going to have a great year, but you do not need him to have a bigger year than these other guys. Ebron is going to get targets. He's going to get red zone targets, but there's other guys getting red zone targets. Switzer is going to get red zone targets. McDonald is going to get red zone targets. Watt will get a red zone target, 1 or 2, and you still have the receivers. Juju Smith-Schuster is the one guy that I feel sorry for here, because everybody says Juju has to have a great year. Juju, the thing about this, with the great stable of receivers that they have, Juju, if Juju has, say, 800 yards and 8 touchdowns, that's still a pretty good season. If Deontay Johnson has the same type, if Deontay Johnson has 806, if James Washington has 705 touchdowns, if Chase Claypool has 505 touchdowns, you know what I mean? You don't have to have the blockbuster, the Antonio Brown great numbers. You just need to have the stable of receivers to go crazy. So I'm saying Juju, if he's going to be judged on stats, then that's going to not bode well for him. But you've got to look at the big picture with Juju and what he's going to bring next year. Juju's going to have a good season. You just might. It's like Fitzpatrick. You might not see it on the stat sheet. James Conner, you hope to have the bigger year. So I'm agreeing with you here, because James Conner, a big year means a healthy year. Healthy year is going to bring a big year. So it goes hand in hand. Right. So you
Right.
need James Conner to really have that bigger year. So that's where my hope is. I hope they all have good years, but really, I think you need Conner to have it. So there you go there. And everybody's saying, you know, like if he stays healthy, sure. And that's the big thing is health. Portna Quenba, can we trade Mason for Josh Rosen? I mean, you could. I don't think they want to. They are more invested in Mason Rudolph than we are here. And I'm beginning to see that they want to see what their investment brings. They see something Monday through Friday that we aren't seeing. So definitely, and some people could actually say that that Mason Rudolph, is a disappointment, but or maybe the fact they're just protecting the fact that they traded up for him. I don't agree with that. I think Mason Rudolph is something that when they're seeing him every day, they're seeing something that they really like. Here's the thing about Josh Rosen. He did not supplant. He really didn't supplant the guy in with the beard and the million kids in the old man from Harvard in Miami. He did not supplant Ryan Fitzpatrick, and you kind of think that he would have. And so that's a red flag too. We might be looking at more of a name in Josh Rosen than anything. And when that window might be closing on him, and that might be the thing. But we know that he was a top 10 pick, and then you're like, we should go ahead and trade for him, but he might not be an upgrade, Tony.
No, I mean he's bounced around a little bit now, and I was high on him coming out of college, but he just if you have to wonder why he hasn't gotten a shot at this point. I mean, coaches aren't in the habit of squashing the hopes of really talented young quarterbacks unless they have a reason. So maybe he's not what many people thought he was coming out of UCLA.
That's it, and that's really what you're looking for there. You never know. I mean, we've seen quarterbacks, Mitch Trubisky. I mean, are you guys trading for Mitch Trubisky right now? I mean, really, I know he led them to the playoffs and everything, but really, Mason Rudolph could have led them to the playoffs last year, maybe if he was playing the last 3 games. There's Mason Rudolph's record wasn't as bad as what you saw, but the play on the field down the stretch was rough. But gosh, we were praying for Mason Rudolph to stay. If he would have stayed healthy in that Jets game, they might have won that game.
Absolutely.
And you never know if Mason Rudolph is in that Bills game, and that's the game Dave and I went to together. It could be different because really Duck was forcing it. In that he was really forcing it. Everybody knew he was going deep, and it was just it was duck season that game, and then it started, and they got the book on him. There you go. Akri says Ben doesn't need great numbers passing, just needs to keep his interceptions down. That's it. Ezra says if Connor kills it, pack your bags, gang. We're going to Tampa. I just looked at the clock, Tony. We are so close to the 1 o'clock hour. So I do have to go ahead and we got to wrap it up. We can't hit that 1 hour mark. So I got really excited. So let me just say to all of you tonight, guys, at, I believe it's around 9:30, Dave Schofield, Michael Beck will have a special guest who's on the Steelers currently right now. Please check it out. Check it out. If you can't check it out on any of your platforms that you go ahead and stream on. We have a great guest coming on tonight. He is a current Steeler. I'm really excited for it. In fact, I'm really excited for it. So that's all I've got to say about that. But Tony, just when you think you've got all the answers,
we keep changing the questions. Tune in later.
All right. I love you guys in the live chat. We really appreciate you. Tune in tonight. We'll see you next time.